Today, what I'd like to talk with you about is about this idea of leadership and service on the front line. In the military, oftentimes when we talk about a front line, we talk about the front line as the place you come in contact with the enemy. Right? And we know that in the military, that front line is a place where you come in contact with the enemy, and that is a place of hardship. It is a place of fear. It's a place where people suffer, but it is also the place where victory is won. That's how we think about the front line. But since I've come home, I've been working with men and women like Phil Sturgeon, who you saw in the Tom Brokaw video. Phil Sturgeon was serving in Iraq. He was in the passenger seat of a truck in a convoy. He was driving when a rocket-propelled grenade came in, hit Phil, and blew him out onto the street. Today, Phil Sturgeon has severe injuries to the entire right side of his body. He still has traumatic brain injuries, overcoming post-traumatic stress. And one of the things that I've recognized in the work that we've been doing with hundreds of veterans around the country is that when they come home, they often face a new front line here at home. What you start to recognize is that actually everyone has a front line in their life. Now, I'd ask you to reflect for a moment to think about your front line. Your front line and the front line of your fellow cadets, the front line of the people in your community, the front line of the people in your family, is the place where they come in contact with hardship. Your front line is that place you come in contact with pain, you come in contact with suffering. We all have to deal with the front line in our life, and it's also the case that the way that we serve, the way that we lead, the way that we react to those things on the front line will determine who we will be and whether or not we achieve a victory in our own lives. And I want to share with you an analogy that we use with the returning veterans who I work with about how to navigate those front lines successfully. And so we're working today through the Mission Continues with men and women who've come back home, and they are often at a place where some of them have lost their eyesight, some of them might have lost hearing, been severely burned, they've lost limb. They've come back home, and they're at a place where their path in the United States military has come to an end. And oftentimes, if they're in the reserves and their National Guard, they've come back home, and their civilian career has also come to an end. And the challenge that we put in front of them is to make a decision that they're going to make a change of course of just a couple of degrees. Now, I really had never done any land nav before I went into the SEAL teams, but when I was in the SEAL teams, I learned that if you took a compass and you pointed in a particular direction, that you could walk all day. Right? You might walk over mountains, you could walk through a forest, you could walk through a desert. And what would happen is, at the end of the day, is that you'd end up in one very particular place. You also learned if at the beginning of that journey, you made a decision that you're going to make a change of course. And you might decide you're going to make a change of course of just 1 or 2 degrees, but you decide you're going to make a change of course of 1 or 2 degrees. You start to walk that new path. Again, you can walk it over mountains, you can walk it through a forest, you can walk it through a desert. What would happen is, at the end of the day, is that you'd end up in a completely different place. We're working today with men and women who have to make a decision that they're going to make a change of course in their life. Their career in the military has often come to an end. Their civilian career might have come to an end. And the challenge that we put in front of them is for them to make a decision that they're going to make a change of course of 1 or 2 degrees and start to follow a new path here at home. And we challenge every single one of them to come back home, use their talents, their skills, their abilities to find ways to continue to lead and to serve here at home. Now, that's the challenge that we put in front of them. Now, the first thing that all of you will notice about this analogy is that this is a really easy thing to say, right, and an incredibly difficult thing to do. So again, I ask you to reflect on your own moments of challenge, reflect on your own front line. Think about what it might be like. You know, you take a step like tonight outside of your everyday routine. You take a step outside of your everyday path. You reflect about what it might be like to make a decision tonight that you're going to make a change of course of just 1 or 2 degrees in your life. And what it might be like to make a decision that you're going to follow that new path until you get to a place where you've actually changed who you are and you've changed the way you can be of service to the people around you. You recognize how hard that is to do. I've been very fortunate, having worked with hundreds of men and women who've come back from places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and worked with some incredible people doing international humanitarian work overseas, and worked with some fantastic people in the SEAL teams to really see and to think about how people actually bring about this kind of transformation and create this victory on their own front lines. And tonight, I want to share some of that with you.